Well, praise the Lord, saints and friends. This is Elder Adrian Hammond, and I'm going to be talking back on our series regarding the Constitution and how the saint of God should respond to it. Specifically, the amendments to the Constitution. Some are directly, of course, some directly affect our rights as citizens of the United States, and some may be more towards the government in some fashion. But we'll see how that affects us. Before I start on it, I'd like to also say thank you for those who've been praying for me. I really can get pretty bashful or sort of leery about asking for prayer, just because I don't want to bother anyone. Although I know that's not supposed to be a bother. I'm not a bother. I understand that. But I'm always like to help others. I love to see people do well, prosper, be blessed. And I enjoy being the conduit to which people are blessed. And so for me, asking someone, it's pretty big. And I am not always the way I should be. So forgive me if I don't always ask. It's just because it's something I have to work with, and God is teaching me humility and all other nice things. But again, I thank you for those who have been looking out for me, looking out for my wife. Of course, it's not me at all. It's if you do something to help my wife, you do something to help me, and that's how I've always felt, whether she was well or not. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. But we are on the amendments to the Constitution. We're on number 9 right now. Number 9. Let me read it, and then we'll go and see what it means for us. It says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights should not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So one may read this and say, okay, what does that have to do with me? Or speaking in plain English. Mainly it says, whatever rights that are specified by the Constitution, like the right to a speedy trial, the right to free speech, things of that particular nature. Those are things that are enumerated. They're listed. It's spoken of. But the Constitution leaves this open. And then, which is actually one of the major advantages of this Constitution. Someone may say disadvantage as well, but I tend to look at it as an advantage, is that the Constitution can be flexible and it can be amended, but it doesn't always have to go to amendments. If there are certain things that are just considered as basic rights. Now, I'm going to talk about one of these today, because that's the one that seems to come across the most evident. And that is the right to privacy. Now, if you look at the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, called the Bill of Rights, the right to privacy is not listed. You may think people talk about it all the time. Right to privacy, right to privacy, right to privacy, right to privacy. But it's not specifically stated in the Constitution, at least not in the first 10 amendments, about the right to privacy. That does not mean that it's not a right that should be observed. And because of that, because of this clause, things like this particular right is held up in court. That you cannot just go and look at what other people are doing. You cannot go spy on people. Yeah, I know we've been seeing many shows and movies and things of that particular nature of satellite spying on us and so on. But as long as you're walking down the street, it's a public thing. So whatever you do there, that's public. Going to your house, going to, let's say, a place of worship, or other places designated as private, can't do that. Not unless the person has consent. Not from the government, but from the person itself. So that's why there's such a big thing about right to privacy. Those of you that are thinking that the CIA can see a fly on an asphalt street from 1,000 miles up, well, it's possible that they can, but they can't do it inside someone's house. I'll give you another example. Periodically, you'll see, most of you have been on Google. There's something called Google Maps. And if you put it on a certain aspect of it, it will show you streets, it will show you buildings, it will show you cars, it will show you houses of where people are at. In fact, I've seen many times where my home is specifically said, I can actually click it so that you can see the front of the house. But you can't go inside. Google can't go inside and look. Now, because I'm outside, people can see me. And you can't yell, it's privacy, it's privacy. Well, you should then build a fence around your yard to keep people from looking. But it's privacy where it is reasonably feasible to enforce it. That is, inside four walls, inside your own house, or wherever it may happen to be. Not a public place. And that's a big law, because many convictions have been overturned due to overzealous law enforcement agencies running roughshod over a person's right to privacy. Now, again, the right to privacy is not enumerated or is not specifically listed in the Constitution, at least not, again, in the first 10 amendments called the Bill of Rights. But just because it's not listed doesn't mean it's not a right. Another thing, the right not to put yourself in danger. Well, that should be self-evident. Yeah, it should be. But that's not always the case. Not always the case. There may be certain instances where essentially a person may feel a little bit different and may put others in danger. Well, you can't do that. But it's not listed in the Constitution. Doesn't have to be. It's an assumed right. So that essentially is an issue. Now, of course, what I have to do is everything that's said like that, I have to also connect it to us saints of God, Christians, what we do. Sorry, there was someone talking. I wanted to make sure they weren't coming this way. Let's talk about this right to privacy. And that's a reason why ministers, evangelists, pastors, and so on can only go so far. Now, we'll preach, and we'll preach what should be done. But we cannot, number one, what we cannot do is take what was committed to us in confidence let's say you admit that to me, you talked to me and you said that you had an adulterous affair. And it took a lot for you to come to me to say that. And you were sorry about it, you were sorrowful about it. Okay. I cannot then go and then in my next message or teaching session say anything about what you did because that would be me running roughshod over your right to privacy. Not only that, you've destroyed a person's trust. And as much as you say, but people need to know that this happens so they don't do it themselves. You can't do it. You can't do it. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. And there have been ministers who've done that and have been sued because of that. And the person who was affronted by this won the case. Because essentially, you cannot take that and then disparage them or say something that was supposed to be kept confidential. It's between you and God and that pastor, that minister. Now you might say, oh, but the Lord saw someone, he sees someone, he now that you've been doing this and that and the other, you better be careful. You better be careful. You may say a prophecy, but the prophecy cannot be so specific that people know exactly who did what. That's an invasion of privacy. And you just can't go, well, it's an utterance from God. Well, the spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. So just because we know something does not mean we have to devote it to the entire congregation. Now, it could be a lesson. It could be used in a general sense. But even then, we got to be careful because some people, they get mad at pastors who they will hear something and then they will preach about not a specific person, but that general topic in their next lesson. And people may get saved by it, people may get filled by it, but the person who hears it, didn't I just hear about that? Didn't we just talk about that? And they will, maybe they won't essentially sue because it wasn't a name mentioned, but they won't come back to you again to acknowledge or to confess anything because they know that you'll say something about it in the next message. And it may lead to that person leaving the church. So this is part of not just the congregation, but especially the ministers, those that call themselves called of God, to be as harmless as doves, but as wise as serpents. But these things happen all the time. We need to make sure that we know so people don't fall the same mistake. Yes, that should happen. And God will give you the right words to say, and how to say it, and when to say it. But we know it's of you because what God says is going to convict, yes. But it's not going to shame those who have they've already repented of it, already feel bad about it, already did what they were supposed to do, which was confess it. And again, about confession. When you confess, be careful who you confess to. Yes, it's confess ye one to another. Be careful about who you confess to. Because if you confess to the wrong person, your business is all in the street. And you just given up your right to privacy. For the same reason that someone can talk about what happens in your bedroom. Specifically. Now, it may be mentioned about what happened, what things are sin, because not everything that two people do in their privacy of their bedroom, not everything is, yes, even though you're mad and wife, there's some things that are just plain despicable. And we have to understand that. But we can't, as a minister, go and start pointing, and you can't do this and that and the other, blah, 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 blah for this person. And I'm not going to try to explain the type of sins. That's not for me to say right now, because essentially it'll be too gross, and that's not the point. The point is that once more, the people of God are held to a higher standard, but not to expose everyone. That's God's thing to do. And he'll expose it in due time, when it is most beneficial for everyone involved. But in terms of us being able to understand what others can do and cannot do against us, just know, in this country, there is a right to privacy that is held just as dear as the right to free speech, the right to practice your faith or belief however you wish to do it, as long as it doesn't harm others. And as well as with the others that I have been discussing over the past several weeks. So, make that something in your own lives as I wrap this up. Whereas I will never tell what happens in your house unless you permit me to say it. And I'm not going to push it. You'll have to tell me to do it. But I want you guys, whether you're a minister or not, to have the same respect. Respect others. Respect their privacy. You may talk to them in confidence. If they wish to talk to you about it, they do it, but you hold it and you don't spread it to another person. If you feel like you have to tell the pastor about what you've heard, let that person know. Don't tell me anything unless you want the pastor to know about this. And that's one thing that also us ministers have been trained to do, is to, if you're going to go up to the altar and you're confessing a particular sin, that if it's of importance enough, we'll have to refer it to pastor, and we'll let you know before you say anything about this. Let's know. I gotta tell pastor. If you want him to know, or your pastor's a woman, or want her to know, then okay, you can talk to me. But you cannot talk to me and have me hold it, because essentially this is something of, it's a very, it's a very serious matter that probably must be addressed, that maybe affects not just you, but your family, maybe other people in the church, and so on. So even though the right of privacy is not completely absolute, it's pretty big. And as ministers of God, we have to abide by it. I'm telling you, as saints of God, let's not be gossipers. Let's not be spreaders of rumors. Let us also have that same respect. God bless you. May he keep you. Take care of yourselves. Love you all in Jesus' name.